Hi, I'm Jessie Gold, and I'm a therapist here at Inner Evolution. And today I wanted to talk about my four favorite DBT skills. So this is just a taste of what the DBT class would be like. So yeah, there are four modules in DBT: mindfulness, emotion regulation, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness. And today we're going to just look at one skill from each module. Um, and the reason I'm doing this is just to give you an idea of this is the kind of stuff we're going to be learning about in DBT class, and you can see kind of what the structure of the class might look like. So for mindfulness, our skill is wise mind. It's kind of a very it's a skill that takes a really long time to develop, but the first step is grasping the concept of it. So it's this idea of a state of mind where you're not in emotion mind or reasonable mind, but a synthesis of the two. So what are emotion mind and reasonable mind? In DBT, there's kind of like these three states of mind that Marsha Linehan posits. Emotion mind is when you're ruled by moods, feelings, and urges. Reasonable mind would be where you're ruled by reason, pragmatic thinking, and logic. What I've noticed is that most people tend towards one or the other in life. I know that throughout my life, I've lived in emotion mind for a lot of my life. And what wise mind is, it's this finding who you are outside of these mental states. Like there's a true self or a higher self there that can guide you and can make wise decisions. Another way to look at what wise mind is who are you outside of conditioning, patterns, and trauma? People who have experienced trauma tend to have dysregulated nervous systems sometimes, which means you might be more likely to be in emotion mind and act out of emotion mind because that's how your body's wired. Also, you might be someone who is stuck in reasonable mind and has no ability to feel your emotions anymore. So what wise mind is it's kind of melding of the heart and the brain, kind of this idea of an integrated self, a whole self, a self that's able to make wise decisions outside of trauma responses, if that makes any sense. What I've noticed is that some people don't quite jive with the concept, like the words wise mind. So I have these other ideas of things that might work for you. I personally like the idea of the self or the higher self, but some recommendations I've gotten from students over the years are inner wisdom, spirit self, soul, essence, inner light, unconditional self, real self, eternal self, authentic self, true self, Buddha nature, the divine within, higher self, intuition, and I like this one, the part of me that loves myself. So yeah, in DBT class, we go deeper into this, and in our homework and in the book that we're going through, there are so many different activities and exercises and homework geared towards helping you find wise mind and helping you discover over time what your concept of wise mind is and how wise mind might be able to help you in the future. So now we're moving into emotion regulation. This is one of my favorite skills, mindfulness of current emotions. What mindfulness of current emotions does is it decreases emotional suffering. Because really, when it gets down to it, when people ask me like, why DBT skills? Why do you teach DBT skills? Because I found that DBT skills have reduced my suffering, and I'm interested in reducing other people's suffering. And that's it. That's like the bottom line, right? How can we reduce suffering in this world? How do you be mindful of current emotions? So really, at its core, mindfulness of current emotions is feeling where you feel that emotion in your body. So let me explain. You start by observing. Observing in DBT is like the beginning of every skill. Every skill is like, okay, notice, observe. Where are you feeling the emotion in the body? What are your physical sensations? Do you think you'd be able to give these sensations a name? Can you name the emotion? Once you name the emotion, it's really about Once again, shifting the consciousness into the body. Where am I feeling it? How does it feel? Because at its core, emotions are physical sensations and they change our nervous system. Even if, a lot of people can't feel that, but the practice here is going little by little, coming to a place where you can start feeling that. You can start feeling your emotions in your body. Because what that does is it helps decrease the frequency and duration of these really intense, painful emotions. So experience your emotion. Where are you feeling it in your body? And if it helps to name, like, my chest feels tight, I feel a weird sensation in that shoulder, I don't know how to describe it, whatever it is. The third step is you are not your emotion. So another way of saying this might be non-judgmental awareness, right? This is an emotion happening in your body. This is not who you are. This can make you behave in certain ways. Nervous system reactions can cause us to behave in certain ways, but it's not who you are fundamentally. But it is real, and it is something you are currently experiencing. So observing the emotion without overly identifying with it, and then respect your emotion. So another way might be introspection or curiosity. What is this emotion doing for me? What is it protecting me from? Why does my body feel like I have to feel this emotion right now? And what can I do to assure my body that it's okay? This is an infographic I found, I think, on Instagram, but I just really like it. So I want to go through it really quick, because this is the entire idea of mindfulness of current emotions. How to feel your feelings. I think that sounds obvious, but totally isn't. An unpleasant feeling arises. Your mind launches into whatever inner story accompanies this feeling. And then, it gives us this directive. But, instead of stop, you are thinking your feelings, maybe, that's interesting. I'm thinking my feelings. I wonder if I can turn my mind towards the body. So redirect your mind away from these thoughts and into the sensations of your body, and mentally name them. Breathe into the feeling and allow it. If you need to cry, if you need to shake, whatever physical activities might help you with this, as long as they're not harmful. Your mind will really want to go back into the thought story mode. When this happens, redirect your awareness back into the body. Take deep breaths, keep feeling into your body, let the feeling exist, and trust that it will leave. This is a big one. This reminder of this is impermanent. No matter how permanent it feels, this is impermanent. Observe it changing, watch it, notice that you have survived. So this particular skill is essential for me. I use it like every day. The next skill we're going to talk about is radical acceptance. This is part of this concept of distress tolerance. What is radical acceptance? Radical acceptance is acknowledging that reality is as it is without pushing it away or wishing it were different or saying that it isn't fair. It's not accepting that whatever happened is okay. It's acknowledging that it happened, and it might not be okay, right? It might not be okay that whatever happened, but it's acknowledging that it did happen so that you can care for yourself now, if that makes sense. There's a lot of these lists of steps in DBT, but really it's all about just grasping the concept. What you might notice is in the 10 steps to radical acceptance, the first step is observe. You might notice that was the first step in mindfulness of current emotions. That's because observe, like I said, it's so important in DBT. This observing what's happening in your body and in your mind, almost as if you were a third party. Almost observing yourself from that place of wise mind, from that place of pure self, true self, and acknowledging that these emotions and all of these behaviors that you're engaging in that might be harmful or not helpful are happening, but that you have the ability to move through and change as a person. Okay, so the first would be observe. Are you questioning or fighting reality? It shouldn't be this way. This isn't fair. And yeah, lots of things aren't fair, and that's real. And anger is real, and that's a real emotion. The question is it harming you? Are you so deep in the anger that you're not taking care of yourself? And this is when we might need to use radical acceptance, right? Remind yourself that the unpleasant reality is just as it is and cannot be changed. This is what happened. Remind yourself that there are causes for reality. Practice accepting with your whole mind and whole self. Using accepting self-talk. You might want to use relaxation techniques, mindfulness, or imagery. This step number 5 I like. List all the behaviors you would engage in if you did accept the facts, and then engage in those behaviors as if you had already accepted the facts. Imagine believing what you don't want to accept and rehearse in your mind what you would do if you accepted what seems unacceptable. Attend to the body sensations. Always is a big thing in DBT, attending to your body sensations when you think about what you need to accept. So they might be very painful, but allow them to happen. Allow disappointment, allow sadness, allow grief to arise within you. Especially if you're feeling anger, a lot of times there's these underlying emotions behind anger that you are not allowing yourself to feel, like grief or sadness or hurt. Acknowledge that life can be worth living even when there is pain. And then if you notice yourself still having the urge to do behaviors that might harm yourself or other people, do pros and cons, which is another DBT skill. Why do we talk about radical acceptance so much in DBT? Well, these are the main reasons. Rejecting reality doesn't change reality. So that's big, right? But if you're unable to accept something, it doesn't change the fact that it happened. Changing reality first requires accepting reality. This is huge because some people are like, well, I don't want to accept that happened. I want to change from it. Yeah, but the first step is to acknowledge that it happened and be honest with yourself. Pain can't be avoided. Rejecting reality turns pain into suffering. This is something that is huge for me. This idea that like pain happens to all human beings. Unfortunately, it's a part of life. Pain is inevitable. Suffering can be a choice sometimes, right? So when suffering can be a choice is when you notice, are you rejecting reality and that's why it's causing suffering? Are you pushing something away and that's why it's causing suffering? Are you over-identifying with something and that's causing suffering? There's a lot to go into here. And when we do the DBT class over Zoom, we have a lot of time for discussion, for questions, and we do group activities. So there's time where we can talk about this with other people. And you can have your voice heard and you can ask questions. 5, refusing to accept reality can keep you stuck in unhappiness, bitterness, anger, sadness, shame, or other painful emotions. This is a really important reminder. Radical acceptance is not approving of the situation, liking the situation, being passive, or not changing. The 4th skill I wanted to talk about today is validation, which is in interpersonal effectiveness. Validation can change your life when you're talking about arguments with another person or disagreements with another person. It can also change your life when you are one of those people that don't validate yourself or your own emotions. So in terms of an interpersonal conflict, validation is finding the kernel of truth in another person's perspective or situation, communicating that we understand this person's perspective. So it doesn't mean that we agree with the person. We are just restating that we heard what they said, and we understand what they said, right? It doesn't mean making something valid. It just means acknowledging that we heard what they said, oftentimes by repeating it back to them. So how do we validate? Paying attention. So listening to the other person, reflect back what they said without judgment. Even if you disagree with it, you want to be able to say, I heard you say blank, right? Notice what emotions are coming up for that person and validate those emotions too. So communicate that as well. Well, I know that you're feeling sad about this. I notice that you're feeling hurt. And acknowledge what's valid and show equality in terms of you get to have your voice heard as well as me. We could do a lot of exercises about active listening skills where how can we mirror what the other person is saying, validate, and then empathize with the person. So I like these 3 steps: mirror, which repeat back what they said. Like, let me check. Is this what you mean? Right? Validate. Okay, I understand, or it makes sense. And then empathize. Well, how would I feel if I believed that? Right? Why validation? My main thing for why validation is that it reduces negative reactivity in the other person. And that's huge when we're talking about interpersonal relationships. It can reduce anger. It can reduce the pressure to prove who is right. And it makes other people more receptive to what we have to say. So I just gave you a tiny taste of one skill from each module. But in the DBT skills class, we will go over a lot more skills, and we will practice them between classes. So every week on Wednesday night from 6 to 7:30, there's a class that includes class discussion, slideshows, question and answer. And then over that week before next week, there's usually about an hour or 2 of practicing these skills. So I'll give you worksheets from the book where you practice the skills and then write about how they were for you. These are some examples of some of the skills we're going to be learning in class. So just to check in again about what is the structure of this class. We do mindfulness for 2 weeks, emotion regulation for 3 weeks, distress tolerance for 2 weeks, interpersonal effectiveness for 2 weeks, and then review and special topics on the last week. So I hope this helped you. And I hope now you can make a decision as to whether you are interested in taking the DBT skills class and whether you think this is right for you. My email address is jessie@innerevolution.com. Feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. Okay, bye.